This is CNN.
I'm Jim Clancy at the CNN Center. Princess Diana of Britain died some 5 hours ago of injuries she sustained in a high-speed car crash in Paris. She was riding alongside Dodi Fayed, her companion of recent days, heavily covered by the media, and the media figures prominently in this story. According to reports from the scene, paparazzi were chasing the princess and Mr. Al-Fayed in their car as they left the Ritz Hotel that is, of course, owned by Mr. Al-Fayed's father. It is not known where they were traveling, but they may have been trying to give the slip, so to speak, to the paparazzi. And the car at high speed hit a column in the center of a tunnel that runs along the Seine River. It's actually at the El Palma Bridge. The injuries that she suffered led to her hospitalization. Doctors tried desperately to save her. They were unable to do that. Diana, the princess, is dead. A matter of hours ago, the chauffeur-driven Mercedes, as we said, crashed into that Paris tunnel. 2 others are known to be dead. Her companion, Dodi Fayed, as we reported, as well as the driver of the car. CNN's Ginny West now recounts the events of the accident.
The accident happened just after midnight in Paris. Princess Diana was in a car with her companion, wealthy Egyptian businessman Dodi Fayed, a driver and a bodyguard. They reportedly had dined at the Hotel Ritz, which is owned by Fayed's father, Mohammed Al-Fayed. Other reports say their car was being chased by paparazzi photographers riding motorcycles. Whatever the case, the car carrying the princess and her companions was traveling at high speed when it smashed into a wall inside a tunnel along the Seine River. Eyewitnesses spoke with CNN's Jim Bitterman.
We saw a large blue Mercedes, darker blue, and the airbag on the passenger side was deployed, as he said. And we saw a lot of liquid on the ground. And when Tom went into the tunnel to help, we didn't know who it was at the time. Somebody came running towards us, speaking French, shouting in French, and we thought for some reason it was going to blow up in the tunnel.
The driver was unconscious, sounding the horn for like, probably almost 2 minutes.
Police have opened a criminal investigation into whether pursuing paparazzi photographers in fact may have contributed to the crash. Eyewitnesses tell CNN photographers were on the scene of the accident immediately.
Well, initially when I approached the vehicle, the gentleman who was taking pictures was there immediately following the accident. Before I could run from the mouth of the tunnel, 50 yards approximately to the 30 yards from the car, he was already...
We're saying within seconds of the crash.
Within seconds. And his camera equipment was far too sophisticated for a tourist.
Newsweek Paris Bureau Chief Christopher Dickey described the condition of the car when it was pulled out of the tunnel.
It is totally smashed in front. You can see where the airbags, both front airbags deployed, but the car, the front of it is totally smashed in. The area above the windshield is totally smashed down. The roof is collapsed on top of both the driver's area and the passenger's area. And the area in the back, all the glass is broken out, and the right-hand part of the roof has collapsed downward there, too.
Police in Paris quickly confirmed that Dodi Fayed and the chauffeur were dead, and the bodyguard was seriously hurt. Diana, reporters were told, was gravely injured. As the hours ticked by, outrage built as people heard the reports paparazzi may have been involved in the accident. And angry actor Tom Cruise told CNN he, too, had been chased by photographers in that same tunnel.
I've actually been in that same tunnel being chased by paparazzis, and they run lights and they chase you and harass you the whole time. It happens all over the world, and it has certainly gotten worse.
About 5 hours after the accident, Christopher Dickey was at Salpêtrière Hospital in Paris when the French government made the official announcement.
It's just been announced that Diana is dead. She suffered serious internal injuries. They could not recover, and she succumbed. We were told by a hospital employee making a public statement, and now the French Interior Minister, Jean-Pierre Chevènement, is speaking and expressing his condolences.
All right, Christopher.
It is confirmed that she's dead. She succumbed to massive internal injuries.
Jenny West, CNN reporting.
And that brings you up to date with how we heard the news of the death of Diana, the Princess of Britain. I want to go now to Paris. There are more developments, I understand, in terms of the ongoing investigation. Certainly no conclusions can be drawn, but Jim Bitterman, what more can you tell us about the allegations, if you will, that the paparazzi photographers were somehow involved?
Just a small update, Jim, but we now understand, CNN has learned that there are now 7 photographers that have been detained by police. They've also confiscated 3 motorcycles. I believe the 7 were on the 3 motorcycles. The criminal brigade is handling the investigation. One interesting point that's come out is all 7 apparently had French press cars, which means to say that they were at least recognized by the French government. Doesn't necessarily mean that they were working for a large organization, but they would have had to go through some procedure. They would have been recognized as French press photographers. Jim?
You know, Christopher Dickey pointed out, Newsweek's bureau chief there, and I think it's a good point, that this car, yes, the paparazzi, the photographers may have been pursuing it, but the driver of this car was going at a speed that, well, you tell me, Jim, how safe is that tunnel at 60, 70 miles an hour?
Well, I drive through that tunnel quite frequently, Jim, and I can tell you that it always terrifies me a bit when I'm alongside someone that's driving too fast. It's a very narrow tunnel. The pillars in the middle of the tunnel sort of make the lanes even narrower than they should be, and so if you're at high speeds, it's a little bit difficult going through, a little tricky going through there. I would say that anything over the recognized speed limit, which I believe in that particular instance is 70 kilometers an hour, about 40 miles an hour, anything above that speed is somewhat risky behavior, and I've seen people go through it at 150 kilometers an hour. So it can be a very hazardous area, I think.
All right, as we look at it, it's rather difficult to get a perspective about how long is that tunnel. How long would somebody be driving through it? Had their car been in the tunnel for some length of time?
No, I would say it would be just a matter of seconds because, in fact, I mean, the tunnel total length is probably 150 meters, 200 meters maximum, and so you pass through it in the question of maybe 30, 35 seconds. They were at the entrance to the tunnel apparently when the skidding began, and we'll have to wait for the results of the criminal investigation to find out exact details, but it seems to me that the driver must have lost control almost immediately on going into the tunnel because the car came to rest somewhat in the middle of the tunnel. You couldn't actually see it from either end very well. So it the accident actually would have started to take place even before the driver hit the tunnel, I would think.
All right, so again, we can look at it, we can tell that there was a great deal of speed that was involved in this accident just from the physical evidence of looking at the car, the twisted metal, the shattered glass, and noticing how the roof of the car, which I understand actually flew up against one of the retaining walls inside that tunnel. The roof smashed down literally to the same level as the top of the doors, the bottom of the windows, if you will, on the sides of the car. And that is it was a fairly strong car, wasn't it, Jim?
Well, this was a big Mercedes, and yes, it was a fairly strong car. The Interior Minister seemed to confirm that it was going fast. He said it was a very high-speed accident, so I think there's some confirmation that the driver was going over the speed limit.
All right, CNN's Jim Bitterman reporting to us there from Paris. On the latest, I want to go now to Prue Lewarne in London to see if there is any more reaction there as Britons awake to learn the tragic news that Princess Diana has died. Prue?
Jim, at this point, as you've alluded to, people are simply beginning to meet, in particular outside Kensington Palace, also Buckingham Palace. It's 8:10 here in the morning. We would expect to see a lot of people in church around 10 a.m. and we will of course bring you pictures of that if we can. The official comment has already come from the Prime Minister, Tony Blair, and I must say it is a very heartfelt and personal comment. People talking about not only the princess in her official capacity, but the fact that everyone knew her to be a very warm and compassionate person. It is still early here, and most people reading their newspapers. The newspapers would have been printed before this news broke, so only if they were to turn on the radio or the television would they actually realise what has happened. So although this did happen, as you mentioned, 5 hours ago, in terms of Britain, it's still quite early news. Jim?
All right. Is there any more word at all on the princes, the young princes, William and Harry, how they might have taken the news? We got a brief report, I believe, coming out of London, just saying that their father had indeed awakened them in the dark of night to tell them that their mother had died.
The palace is not in the tradition of releasing how the people within the family feel, but the pictures often, as you mentioned, do tell the story. A few weeks ago, at Balmoral, the family home, we see pictures of Charles with the two boys, William and Harry. What's significant about these pictures is that, in a sense, this was a photo opportunity offered to the press. They were given this opportunity to come into the grounds of a royal estate, Balmoral, presuming then that they would go away and leave the boys in peace for the rest of the holiday. Their holiday was for all of August in Balmoral. And you can see them here in a completely different light, very happy. They spent just 5 or 10 minutes with the press, and then they went away on their moments with their father and for the rest of August. It's a principle that the royal family has been able to use with the sons. Of course, Diana has not had the same privilege. She was never able to say, I'll give you half an hour of my time, now please go away. William is 15 years old. He has been accustomed to an awful lot of publicity. Harry is just 12. He's coming up to his 13th birthday in just a few weeks. We understand that they had their normal holiday pursuits, including hunting and a lot of outside time in the summer sunshine in Scotland. Of course, all of that has ended this morning. We do not know when they will be coming back to London. The palace has not released those details, but as we look at these pictures, which we saw 3 weeks ago, thinking they were just a normal family moment, now they take on a completely different light. Jim?
Prue, I'm told that the boys aren't especially fond, or really aren't fond at all, of the press.
Of the?
Press. The media.
Well, I mean, can you imagine a 12-year-old and a 15-year-old? Just a recent example, only a few months ago, for the birthday of William, who turned 15, Diana decided that she would take them to the pictures, to the cinema, at the local cinema. She took them to a film because it starred William's favourite actor. This then got into the press, and there was an absolute storm in the tabloids here that, first of all, the subject matter wasn't appropriate for the sons because it was about Ireland and the IRA, and maybe they were getting an inappropriate political education. And secondly, it turned out that Harry is 12 and he should have been 15 if he was going to see this film. So imagine, even something like going to a cinema outing for your birthday gets across the front page of the tabloids, all of the tabloids, the next day.
All right, Prue. Thanks for that update. That little bit of insight into the human lives, what really is the life of a royal living in Britain. As we continue to cover the story, as we know it, we're looking at updates to find out whether or not the press photographers may have been involved, may have in some way or another caused this accident. The police, as Jim Bitterman reported a little bit earlier, have detained 7 photographers, as well as 3 vehicles that they were riding on. It is not clear that all of them were even at the scene. They have just been detained for questioning. We won't know more about this, perhaps even for days, but we're going to continue to try to follow that. We also know that Princess Diana's remains are going to be returned to Britain sometime on Sunday. Of course, there has been no formal announcement on any of the funeral arrangements. That is another thing that we continue to monitor. But what we do know is that a princess has died, a princess whose life was marked by triumph. It was also marked by tragedy. CNN's Marina Colby looks back at Princess Diana.
Born Diana Frances Spencer on July 1st, 1961, Diana first attracted the public attention in 1981. That's when her engagement to Prince Charles was announced. The couple were married on July 29th of that year. It was a fairy tale-like wedding that garnered the attention of the world. Less than a year later, Diana became a mother with the birth of Prince William. On September 15th, 1984, Diana became a mother for the second time with the birth of Prince Harry. But what seemed a fairy tale marriage to the world was disintegrating behind the walls of Buckingham Palace. In the early years of the marriage, Diana outshone her husband on nearly every occasion. In 1986, the first press stories began speculating that the marriage was in trouble. Biographer Andrew Morton wrote in Diana, Her True Story, that Charles had begun an affair with his former girlfriend, Camilla Parker Bowles. Diana, too, began an adulterous relationship with cavalry officer James Hewitt. She said she adored him. Charles and Diana separated in December of 1992.
It has turned out to be an annus horribilis.
That year, Queen Elizabeth referred to 1992 as a horrible year. Despite the separation, Diana insisted she did not want a divorce. But after more damaging press stories in November of 1995, Diana gave a highly critical interview in which she admitted her affair with Hewitt and said she believed Charles would not make a good king. After the interview, the Queen in effect ordered her son to divorce Diana. The princess agreed to the divorce in February of 1996, and the final decree was given in August of that year. Diana continued to maintain a high profile following the divorce, but her private life remained quiet until she went public about her relationship with Dodi Fayed earlier this month. Diana campaigned for a ban on the use of the landmines and worked for many charities. She once said she wanted to be a sort of ambassador, a queen of the people's hearts. To many, it's how she will be remembered. Marina Colby, CNN, reporting.
My parents just showed me how to get streaming video over the internet.
My dad showed me this cool real-time radio station online.
Matt, what's the matter?
It's my parents. They still have a 28.8 modem.
US Robotics 56K modem download at incredible speeds, so you can finally unlock the true power of the internet.
We were all 28.8 users once.
The US Robotics 56K modem from 3Com. Buy one now and get $50 cash back.
I love being a mom, but I was still miserable because I was so heavy, and I knew I had to do something. I lost over 50 pounds on the Slim Fast plan. Just keep them in the fridge, grab them, shake them up, have my lunch while I'm feeding him. It's just such a healthy drink.
With 23 vitamins and minerals, protein, calcium, fiber, all the balanced nutrition like a healthy meal.
Oh, I feel very healthy, and I have to be to keep up with him.
Slim Fast, balanced nutrition for a healthy life.
What more could you want?
Turn up the volume. It's Classical Thunder, the most explosive collection of music you've ever heard. Get Classical Thunder on 2 cassettes for just $14.99 or 2 compact discs for $16.99. Then you can preview other classical favorites albums. Satisfaction guaranteed. Classical Thunder. Call now.
To order Classical Thunder, call 1-800-257-1257 or send $14.99 for 2 cassettes or $16.99 for 2 CDs plus $3.50 shipping to the address on your screen.
I'm Jim Clancy at the CNN Center. Princess Diana has died. The British princess died after suffering from injuries that she suffered in a auto accident at about midnight Paris time. She was riding alongside her companion Dodi Fayed after having dinner at a restaurant, a hotel restaurant owned by Fayed's father. The two apparently trying to avoid the paparazzi or the press left. Their car was traveling at high speed along the Seine River when it went into a tunnel. It struck a column in the tunnel and caused massive injuries to 3 of those who were riding in the car. 3 people have died. Al Fayed, Princess Diana, the driver of the car, Princess Diana's bodyguard, is seriously injured. We're going to switch now and give you an idea of how this story is being covered by British television. GMTV coverage.
She was everybody.
Let's listen in.
She's like a rose, wasn't she? It's like Cinderella. Everyone's going to miss her.
Believe that she has died in a car crash.
Hasn't quite sunk in yet.
Now, there's talk of, obviously, of funeral arrangements. What kind of send-off do you think Diana should be given?
I think she should come home.
Just a normal send-off, because she was a normal person.
Not a state funeral as such?
No.
She will get a
She was a normal person. And she would have liked to us to be normal with us.
Yeah.
She was one of us.
One of us. Normal.
Okay, well, thank you very much for giving us your time this morning.
Thank you.
Francesca and Andy are coming around to pan around to show the people who are just standing here, just some of them who have turned up this morning, who've come down here. It's a very grey morning. Many people have been here around me crying this morning. It's a very difficult scene to report from. The rain has started to come down as well, which matches the mood, believe me, of what is happening here at Kensington Palace. This has been Diana's home for the past 5 years or so, since she separated from Prince Charles. And of course, everybody's thoughts here this morning are of those 2 young princes. Diana was due to meet them here today. She was coming back from France from her holiday today to meet Prince William and Prince Harry, to spend some time with them before they started school next week. Fiona.
Okay, Martin, you said everyone there is in mourning this morning. Everyone around the nation is in mourning this morning because Diana, Princess of Wales, is dead. Tom Corby joins me. He knew Diana in a professional context. Lady there said to Martin, Diana would not want a state funeral. Do you think that's true?
Yes, I agree with that. She was never one for the Penelope of state. She liked, I think she'd like almost a private funeral. She wasn't an establishment person as such.
Is that realistically ever going to happen, though?
Who knows? State funerals are generally for monarchs, and Winston Churchill had one.
But she is the mother of the future king.
She is the mother of a future king. There might be something in between.
We'll have to wait and see.
Not
We'll
her
know.
personality, a great grand funeral.
Yeah, well, we'll know, unfortunately, soon enough. If you have just woken up this morning, I think this actually says more than I could ever say to you. Cocktail of emotions we'll all be feeling this morning, but simply that is the truth of the matter this morning. Diana, Princess of Wales, is dead. That in a special edition rushed out at 6 a.m. this morning. Diana pronounced dead at about 3 o'clock our time this morning. It was following a car crash in Paris, a high-speed car crash, if it's to be believed, pursued by members of the paparazzi. Diana's companion, who'd made her so happy in the last weeks of her life, Dodi Fayed, died alongside her instantly at the scene. Obviously, our thoughts are with Diana's family this morning. They're also with the Al Fayed family. Our thoughts are with you. Now for the details of the events of what turned out to be a memorable and unfortunately tragic night. Here's Paula Tish.
This is all that's left of the Mercedes which was carrying Princess Diana and Dodi Fayed. Eyewitnesses say the car entered an underground tunnel near the Eiffel Tower at high speed and hit a wall. Mr. Fayed is believed to have died at the scene. The princess was taken to intensive care where she died in the early hours of this morning from massive internal chest injuries. The British ambassador to Paris stayed at the hospital while surgeons fought to save her life.
The death of the Princess of Wales fills us all with deep shock and with deep grief. And our thoughts and our prayers are with her family and her friends, and with the family and friends of the others who died in the accident.
It appears the driver, who also died, was trying to shake off at least 5 paparazzi following on motorbikes. They're now being questioned by police. Diana and the Harrods heir were believed to have been heading for a house in the centre of the French capital when the crash happened. They'd just had dinner at the Ritz. The couple had arrived in Paris yesterday afternoon at the end of their second Mediterranean cruise together, sailing around the French Riviera and the coast of Sardinia. Harrods spokesman Michael Cole has called it an appalling and needless tragedy.
The world has lost a princess who is simply irreplaceable, and Mr. Al Fayed has lost his beloved eldest son. Mr. and Mrs. Al Fayed are totally devastated by their loss, and they share the sorrow of the princess's family.
The princess had been expected to travel back to London shortly to see her two sons after their holiday in Balmoral with their father. The princes have been told of her death.
As has the whole world by now, Mother Teresa is said to be praying for Princess Diana. President Clinton said he and his wife Hillary are profoundly saddened by Diana's death, and they said they were very fond of her, as were all of us, as was everyone who knew Diana, including our next guest, Tom Corby. Tom, what was it about her that, I mean, this outspilling of emotion all over the world, why?
Well, she was a magical figure in many ways, and it's very, very hard to divide the media hype and the real Diana. Occasionally you caught a glimpse of the real Diana. And I think she was somewhat different from her media image, but she did love the publicity, there's no doubt about it. She thrived on it, and the media loved her. But there was another Diana too, rather quiet and rather self-effacing and quite sincere. So there were two people.
Yeah, well, there are in all of us, aren't there, after all? She's not alone on that front.
She's not alone in that, certainly not.
But the fact that can't be denied is she was a mother who doted on her sons. They were her life, weren't they?
She adored them, they adored her. And my sympathy goes to the Prince of Wales. How do you tell two young boys?
I know.
It's the most appalling dilemma for him, and he's got to fill the gap.
How will William especially have taken it? I mean, he's coming into teenagehood now. We can see him there, strapping lad, lovely boy. How on earth is he going to take the news of his mother's death? Because he was particularly close to her, wasn't he? It was his idea that she auctioned her dresses off in New York.
Yeah. I don't know, he's on the verge of manhood. It's a very, very difficult time for any young guy. Appalling, and of course, he always blamed the media for the breakup of his parents' marriage. I don't think that's strictly true, but it's a kid-like reaction.
He hates them. I mean, the footage we've just seen there, he found it very hard to give them a direct look.
But he managed it.
And now, ironically, tragically, they may actually have had a hand in his mother's death.
Yes. Can you entirely blame them? They were doing their job. Diana knew the media were always present. The paparazzi were always present. It's very hard to attribute blame entirely.
Yeah, we're not looking to do that,
no,
but...
It's just one of the most awful...
Isn't that going to make it even harder for William, though, as he takes on more responsibility, because he is, after all, a future king? Isn't that going to make his life with the media 10 times as hard now? Because he'll have in his head somewhere, whatever the outcome may be, that they, in some way, contributed to his mother's death.
Yes, he'll probably think that, but as he grows older, he'll probably reason it out and logic it out. But he's got to live with the media. I mean, he's the next king, and it's part of the job.
It's so difficult, isn't it? I mean, we cannot imagine how Prince Charles and the two young princes are feeling this morning. One thing we do know is that they are still in Balmoral, which is where they heard the news this morning. How Prince Charles broke the news, one cannot even think about, really, as Tom's just said. But they are in Balmoral. Stephen Jardine, our correspondent, is in Edinburgh this morning. Stephen, perhaps you can put us in the picture. How was the news broken?
Well, just to take you through the timetable of events overnight at Balmoral, Fiona, the news came from London via the French ambassador to London. He called Balmoral in the early hours of the morning with the news from Paris that Diana had been involved in the car crash. The Queen was woken by her private secretary, as was the Duke of Edinburgh and the Prince of Wales. The Prince himself then went into the boys' bedrooms and woke them and told the young princes their mother had been injured in the crash. The whole family then stayed up and followed events overnight, medical bulletins coming out of the hospital, and it was the Prince of Wales who broke the terrible news to his young sons that their mother had in fact died as a result of that crash.
And Stephen, another tragic irony is that they were due to reunite with Diana in London later today.
Indeed, the young princes hadn't seen their mother for some weeks. In fact, since that holiday at Saint-Tropez, which was featured so heavily by all the newspapers, they'd since then been with their father, travelling on Britannia initially up the west coast of Scotland and round the north of Scotland to Aberdeen, where they then drove to Balmoral. They've been there for several weeks now, enjoying some peace and quiet with their father. But now, of course, all that ends. They were due back in London to meet up with their mother again this morning. They'll never see her again now.
I know, well, a fact that we're all finding so hard to believe this morning, Stephen. Do you think they will, they were due to return to London anyway, do you think now that Prince Charles will accompany them back to London to deal with this?
Well, there's a huge media presence, I understand, Fiona, at Aberdeen Airport at the moment, which is traditionally how the royal family travel to and from Balmoral. Everyone there just awaiting the arrival of the royal party. It's assumed the entire royal family will, in fact, now leave Balmoral and go back to London, obviously using separate modes of transport. They're expected there, perhaps over the course of the next few hours, to make the journey back to London so that arrangements can begin to be made for the funeral of Diana, Princess of Wales.
OK, Stephen, those words still very, very hard to take in this morning, but thanks for joining us from Edinburgh. Now,
we can hear there the personal pain as the broadcasters in Britain deliver the news and continue to cover the story. Their perspective. That was GMTV. We're going to take a short break here on CNN. We'll be right back after this.
This is the place for complete coverage of live breaking news wherever it occurs. This is CNN.
You can advertise in the newspaper, but your message may not get delivered. You can advertise on the radio, but what you say may not be heard. But if you really want to reach out and grab them, advertise on local cable on USA Network. Together, we'll deliver.
To advertise on USA and other cable networks, call 733-5812.
You've heard a lot lately about plans to protect you from sexually transmitted diseases. The rapid expansion of AIDS and herpes and syphilis demand the best plan available. God's had a plan that works all along. A message of hope from your friends and neighbors at the First Baptist Church of Chalmette.
This is CNN.
An auto accident in Paris has killed Diana, the Princess of Wales. Her companion, wealthy businessman Dodi Fayed, and their chauffeur also died when their car crashed in a tunnel. A bodyguard was seriously hurt. Reports say the car was trying to elude paparazzi photographers who were chasing it on motorcycles. Diana died a short time later at a Paris hospital. The accident happened just after midnight, Paris time. Britons learned the tragic news when they awoke on Sunday. Mourners began gathering outside Kensington Palace, where they've been taking flowers. That was her home in London. Buckingham Palace says Queen Elizabeth and Diana's former husband, Prince Charles, expressed distress and shock at the news of Diana's death. Her body is expected to be returned to Britain sometime on Sunday. Princess Diana's life was a life that saw some happiness, but much sorrow. Some of her friends have noted, as we have talked to them over the last several hours, looking at that life, that she was a woman who had so much. She had beauty, she had wealth, she certainly had international fame. But simple, common happiness somehow seemed to elude her. CNN's Tim Lister has more.
It was the wedding of the century. A marriage that captivated not just the people of Britain, but the world. On a summer's day in 1981, Lady Diana Spencer married the Prince of Wales amid the splendour of St Paul's Cathedral. She was young, diffident and uncertain, not used to the formality and rules that governed the House of Windsor, and not used to the unrelenting media spotlight that would become part of her daily existence. The expectation was that she and Prince Charles would continue the line of succession. providing at least one heir who would assume the throne in the 21st century. And just a year after the marriage, their first son, Prince William, was born, soon to be followed by another son, Harry. Everything seemed to be going according to the script carefully prepared by Buckingham Palace. But Diana was depressed by her frequent separations from Prince Charles and by what she perceived as his excessive devotion to royal duty. She hated being away from her sons and was both hurt and angered by constant speculation about her husband's alleged relationships with other women. She spoke later of Lady Camilla Bowles, a longtime friend of Charles, as being the third person in her marriage. For his part, Prince Charles appeared to resent her immense popularity with the public, which stole the limelight from him, and his interests, the countryside, ecology, fishing and hunting, were incompatible with hers, music, fashion. Amid intense media attention, it became clear that Princess Diana and Prince Charles were growing apart. The newspapers would measure the days they spent separated. A book, Diana, Her Story, by Andrew Morton, revealed details of her unhappiness. She had developed eating disorders and was even reported to have attempted suicide. Eventually, but out of the blue, the then British Prime Minister John Major announced that Diana and Charles would separate. The British monarchy had not faced such a crisis since the abdication of King Edward VIII in 1936. But the princess was not to be deterred from maintaining her high public profile. Once the couple's divorce was confirmed and freed from the shackles of royal protocol, she began to be seen in public with other men. She focused her official life on several charities, as varied as the Royal Ballet in London and the Red Cross campaign against the landmines. Within the past few months, she had been in Angola and Bosnia to see at first-hand the effects of landmines as a guest of the International Red Cross, a stand that courted political controversy. She managed to combine her charitable work with a high-profile social calendar. But it was her liaison with Dodi Fayed that had seemed to be the most serious since the breakup of her marriage. Tim Lister, CNN, reporting.
Recapping some of the details that are coming into us as we continue to follow this tragic story that it's developing in Paris. Bernadette Chirac, the wife of the French President Jacques Chirac, has reportedly gone to the hospital to pay her respects to Diana, the Princess of Wales. She was an acquaintance of the Princess of Wales, but at the same time she was said to have known and gotten along with her quite well for the few times that they met. We understand also that Mohammed Al Fayed, that is the father of Dodi Fayed, has now arrived in Paris. He has had to go to the morgue to identify his son's body. Dodi Fayed was no stranger to wealth or success or the exclusive lifestyle that they often bring, but few people knew about him or really his life story until his romance with Princess Diana made the tabloids. CNN's Porter Anderson has Dodi Fayed's story.
Dodi Fayed was 41 years old, the son of Mohammed Al Fayed, regarded as one of the wealthiest men in the world. Al Fayed owns the luxury London department store Harrods and the Ritz Hotel in Paris. Dodi Fayed, a film producer and international jet setter, is reported to be a multimillionaire himself. He produced such films as the Academy Award winner Chariots of Fire.
It's hard. It requires concentration of will, energy of soul.
The World According to Garp. And the FX movie.
Out of maybe 100 writers, Bill Conklin came up with a great idea for this, for FX2, which everybody liked.
Fayed had homes in New York, London, Paris, Los Angeles, and Switzerland. He's dated a number of celebrities, including Brooke Shields and Britt Eklund. Like Diana, he's been married once and divorced. One of his former girlfriends, Kelly Fisher, says she was engaged to marry Fayed. She told CNN's Larry King that Fayed left her, as she put it, for a bigger fish.
I feel that Dodi is just really in love with the media attention and being with Princess Diana, and I think that's the bottom line with him. They love it, the Fayeds. They love it.
Fayed and Princess Diana are said to have met about 10 years ago when he played polo against her former husband, Prince Charles. Earlier this month, British newspapers were awash with speculation about the romantic future of Fayed and Princess Diana after photos were published that showed them embracing. The photos were the first evidence of a relationship between Diana and another man since she and Prince Charles were divorced in August of last year. One London tabloid speculated that Fayed and the princess would announce their engagement in September. Porter Anderson, CNN reporting.
Lord Jeffrey Archer is standing by in our London studios, and I want to bring Lord Archer into the discussion, if I may, right now, just to ask you, first off, your reaction today.
Horror, because of what amazing human being she was, and the amount of very, very good work she did for humanitarian causes and for charity. If she attended a charity, you could guarantee it was sold out in moments. You could guarantee that that charity would benefit not only by her association, but by large sums of money going to the causes she believed in. She also had a humanitarian side because she cared desperately about the landmines problem throughout the world. I had the privilege of working with her through the Red Cross and seeing those charity events and occasions. And she was unique in British life, and I'd like to say on your program that's probably a worldwide feeling that she had something to offer that no one else had. She was, I think, could be fairly described as the brightest star in our constellation.
The Princess of Wales was also a person who caused considerable controversy, particularly with the conservative establishment, if you will, the royalist camp in Britain, because she didn't follow the prescribed road. She more or less walked her own path.
She was very much a person in her own right, and I think all I will remember is the good she did. We were preparing for a big function in 3 weeks' time for the Red Cross, where we were going to do another auction, and what always happened if she was present at such a function, you literally got, the charity got twice as much money. I remember telling her that the 10 most successful charity auctions I'd ever done in my life, 9 she was present at, and it wasn't a coincidence. So I don't want on this particular occasion to think of anything other than the good she did and the unbelievable loss this will be to the British people and to the charities she supported, and I suppose above all to her 2 sons, William and Harry, to whom she was utterly devoted. She would spend, whenever we were in private together, spend great periods of time talking about William and Harry. She felt an immense duty to them, and her love for them was never under discussion.
What was it about her that reached out, not only in Britain, around the world? People had she charmed them, she mesmerized them. People had, you had to pick up a story to read it about her. Why do you think that was?
2 things. One, she was, as anyone could see, beautiful. She was a stunningly beautiful woman. The camera loved her, and she was stunningly beautiful. Secondly, she loved people, particularly young people. You can't put that on. You can't fake it. I mean, if you saw her with children, she was utterly and completely happy, and she liked people from every walk of life. She was the best mixer I've ever seen, and an example to us all in that way.
She had a different personality in the royal family. Certainly the Queen Mum is popular, but she is shown, as you said earlier, and I like the way you put it, the brightest star in the constellation there. Your own memories of her, in a personal way. I don't think that most of us, who, like myself, never got to meet her, saw her from a distance, only saw her through the eyes of the camera lens or the writing of a news correspondent, a royal correspondent, if you will, that covers the royal family. But who was she?
She wanted a private life, very much indeed. Whenever you saw her alone, she discussed serious issues and amusing ones as well. She could flip from one to the other, but of her popularity with the British people, there will never be a discussion. I remember once driving past the Ritz Hotel in London, and there was a massive crowd outside, and we were held up, and I just said to the porter, who's got this crowd? And he said, Princess Diana, to which I replied, how silly of me, yes, the only person on earth who could do that. And she was doing another charity function. That was her public side. Her private side was a desperation to be alone at times. I remember once sitting with her talking about 2 things we were going to do in the future in charity, and she said, well, I can't do that one because I'll be with William and Harry. And she put the children first always. She said, look, let's see if we can fit it in here, or we can, but the children came first. So when I was told at 5 o'clock this morning when I was phoned at 5 o'clock this morning by an old friend to be told she had died, I woke my wife to tell her, and my wife's opening words were, "Those poor children," and I suspect that's what we should be thinking about.
What did she think was important to instill in her children? Did she ever confide that with you?
She had absolutely no doubt about the role William will at some time play when he is the monarch of our country. Absolutely no doubt at all. There was the serious side that discussed the role she felt she had to play as their mother, and there was the witty side. She couldn't resist the odd, very humorous person. I remember once she showed me the latest picture of William, who suddenly got very tall, and she said, "He's very tall, isn't he, Geoffrey?" And I said, "Yes, he is, ma'am." And she said, "You know which side of the family he got that from, don't you?" So she had a sort of, she couldn't help teasing as well. But I will remember a person who it was fun to be with, who was always there when we had the Kurdish campaign problem, which sprung up overnight. There she was at the biggest function. There she was helping. That's what I will remember.
Did she have to be primed by her press officers? This is a good charity for you to be involved in. Landmines is a significant issue. Or was she her own boss when it came to that?
Very much her own boss. She didn't have a press secretary. In fact, many people complained that she didn't have someone who did guide her in that way. If she felt passionately about something, she just got on with it. If you told her some help was needed somewhere, she just got on with it. It got her into trouble sometimes, but I think it was also an immense strength because it made her appear human, which of course she was. So she cared about AIDS, and she cared passionately about the Red Cross and the problem of landmines. And those were the things she cared about, and I don't think she gave a damn who told her that she ought to be doing something else, or perhaps it wasn't wise to do this particular day. If she cared, she got on with it.
You said she had a sense of humor. Did she also have a temper?
No, I never experienced it myself. She was a great tease, and she knew she was in a position to tease, and she would, if she knew you quite well, she would, "Shall I sign the tablecloth, Geoffrey?" she once said to me. When we were doing an auction, and she'd raised, not me, she'd raised over 100,000 at that auction, and she said, "Shall I sign the tablecloth?" And she paused for a moment and then said, "Gosh, she really would like me to sign the tablecloth." She had a terrific sense of humor, and she will be greatly missed by the British people because she holds a special role in this country. She was a fairy tale princess, and we will never see the like of her again.
As you look at...
She was, as I said.
I'm sorry,
I was just going to say she was, as I said, but not at all. She was, as I said, the brightest star in our constellation.
As we look at this tragedy as it unfolds, the possible involvement of the press, doubts about people hounding her, chasing her, reports, of course, as you, I'm sure, have heard from Paris, that photographers may have been pursuing the car that she was riding in with motorcycles and cameras. This is certain to spur yet again a debate over the British press. How far can they go? Even if, as I understand it, our latest report out of Paris indicated that all 7 of the photographers or press people, if you will, that have been detained by Paris police hold French press cards. They are probably French citizens. But it's going to be a huge debate anyway in Britain.
Well, I think the British Foreign Secretary, Robin Cook, has said from his trip abroad that this matter will have to be looked into. I think those were the words of the Foreign Secretary, and I wouldn't add or take away from them.
It's hard for us at this point to really focus, I think, on the investigation of the crash. There's a lot of speculation that's out there. Frankly, we are not going to know any of the answers. What is known is that we have lost Diana, Princess of Wales. Just once again, Geoffrey Archer, a last question about what she's left us.
Well, what she's left the world is a better place, because there are many children, there are many charities, there are many human beings, simply because of her presence, simply because of her enthusiasm, simply because of her energy, are better off. We cannot begin to understand or know how much will have been lost by the joy she brought. I remember once dining at dinner when she had decided to come out of public life. And I was walking around the room just before she arrived, talking to the people who were setting up the tables. Every one of them felt they knew her. Every one of them felt she belonged to them. You can't teach someone to do that. You can't. That's very special indeed, and that's what she had, and that's what I will remember.
We did have her.